Yo, what's up everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy channel. And in this video, I have my top starts and sits, my startums and situms heading into week 3 of the 2021 NFL Fantasy Football season. Before we get into that, I'm also going to recap my starts and sits from week 2. We're going to quickly talk about what I hit on and what I missed. We actually had a pretty good week, I would say, for week 2. And yeah, also before we get into the action, make sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. And let's do a quick little recap of week 2. So all of the scoring, unless I say otherwise, is in half PPR. So I'm going to go through my starts and then my sits. So my quarterback starts, we'll start with Aaron Rodgers. He finished as a quarterback 5. I predicted a bounce back game against the Detroit Lions after a rough week 1. He was a quarterback 5, threw 4 touchdowns, and he had 26.8 fantasy points and 4 point per passing touchdown. I think the list I looked at, it's talking about 4 points per passing touchdown. So yeah, he had 26.8 points. That was definitely a hit. Two of my other starts were Matthew Stafford and Baker Mayfield. Obviously, I didn't have them as like the overall quarterback 1, but they were guys that you could stream, low-end quarterback 1s, that type of vibe. Matthew Stafford was the quarterback 19, and Baker Mayfield was the quarterback 18. They both had about 18.5 points. So while the overall finish wasn't great, it is important to note that they were about 18.5 points, and the quarterback 13 was 19.9. So they were like a point and a half away from being like close to a quarterback 1. So I'm not going to say that those guys were hits, but they weren't misses either. And then my final quarterback start last week was Teddy Bridgewater of the Denver Broncos, who finished as a quarterback 11, 21.22 fantasy points, threw a couple touchdowns. That was definitely a hit. And then I had 3 stardom running backs. Najee Harris was a hit for me. He was the RB9 with 16.6 points. He did get a little lucky. He wasn't very efficient, but he did catch, I think it was a 25-yard touchdown pass. Usually I don't like to rely on running backs catching touchdown passes, but we'll count that as a hit. He was a top 10 running back. And then Damian Harris was another hit of mine. He was the running back 17, so he was a nice solid RB2. It's kind of what I expected from him because he's not super involved in the passing game. He had 62 rushing yards, 2 receiving yards, and he got in the end zone on a rushing touchdown. Finished with 12.9 points. And then my big miss at the running back position was Kareem Hunt. He only had 5.8 points, so that was a bummer. He was an RB41. And then I had a few wide receiver starts of the week. My big miss was Antonio Brown. He only had 2.2 points, the wide receiver 88. But even going into that matchup, I clarified that it's going to be hard to predict which receiver on the Buccaneers is going to be left out any given week. And I mentioned that Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are also very good plays, and that they were. Godwin was the wide receiver 22, 14.2 points, and Mike Evans was the wide receiver 4 overall in the week with 22 points. So I'll count those as like 2 like kind of asterisk hits with Antonio Brown being a miss. I also listed Tim Patrick as a nice little flex play. He finished as a wide receiver 40. He had 11.2 points. I think he caught 4 passes, but he did get in the end zone luckily. So he didn't have a great game, but it was the touchdown saved him. So not really a hit or a miss. Deebo Samuel finished as a wide receiver 28, 13.1 points. That was another hit for me. And then I had 2 huge hits at the wide receiver position. We had Cooper Kupp. I said to start him with full confidence, and he finished as the number 1 overall wide receiver with 32.3 points. So that was a big hit. And then Mike Williams finished as the wide receiver 9, 18.6 points. So those were 2 big calls from me. And then 3 tight end startums were, one of them was Noah Fant. He was a tight end 6 with 11.3 points, got in the end zone luckily. So that was a hit. Anytime your tight end gets in the end zone, he's going to finish well. And then Gronk, speaking of getting in the end zone, he got in the end zone twice, finishing as a tight end 2, 17.9 fantasy points, 2 great weeks in a row. I said I would keep starting him, and he was definitely a hit. And then my big miss at the tight end position was Tyler Higbee. I said to start him with confidence. He finished as the tight end 47 and only had 1.3 fantasy points. So those were all my startums. And by the way, I am going to have less starts and sits this week than the last week because I felt like that was too many. So my sits for week 2 were 1 quarterback sit was Carson Wentz. He finished as the quarterback 17. He had about 18.5 points. Another one was Matt Ryan. He was a quarterback 16, finished with 19.3. You could have got by playing them, but they weren't super spectacular. Sort of like the Stafford and Baker Mayfield starts. They were kind of just whatever. Sam Darnold, I said to sit, and he actually had a good game. He finished as a quarterback 13 with 19.9 points. So we'll count that as a miss on my part. Although I don't think anyone was really starting him out there unless they were desperate in a 2-quarterback league. And then at running back, I had 3 sits. Josh Jacobs was one of them. He actually didn't play. Mike Davis finished as the running back 21 in half PPR. He did have 7 receptions and he had 9.8 points in half PPR. But in non-PPR, he finished as the running back 33 and only had 6.3 points. And we did see Cordero Patterson get involved. I think he had a couple touchdowns. So that I'm going to count that as a hit for me because Mike Davis really did not have that good of a week, especially in non-PPR, because he didn't get points for those little dump-offs. And then Mark Ingram was another sit-em, and he finished as the running back 49, only had 4.5 points. So that was another big hit for me. We have a few more sits to recap here. Robbie Anderson finished as the wide receiver 63. I said I was avoiding him, and that was a really good call. Wide receiver 63, only 5.3 points. And also Brandon Ayuk, who had a goose in week 1. I think he played a little bit more, and he had 1 catch. He was the wide receiver 107 and only had 1.1 points. So that was a hit. And then at tight end, they were all hits in terms of my sit-ems. Jawan Johnson, I think he had 2 touchdowns in week 1. I was like, hey, don't chase the touchdowns. I don't think he'll do that great. And he finished as a tight end 31, only 2.8 points, so that was a hit. Zach Ertz, I said to sit. He finished as a tight end 53, only had 1.1 points. That was a hit. And then Mike Gesicki finished as the tight end 19 with 5.6 points. So that was another hit. So we did pretty well in week 2 for our startums and sit-em calls. Only a couple misses in there. But now we're moving on to week 3. And let's get right into that action here. So I'm going to, just like I did with the recap, I'm going to start with all my startums and then move on to the sit-ems, and we'll just do it by position. So I have 3 quarterback starts of the week, and the first one is Jalen Hurts, a guy that you're probably already considering starting. For those of you who do not know, rushing is OP in quarterback scoring, and he is a very dynamic rusher at the quarterback position. He's currently the quarterback 6 on the season, and in a game in week 2 where he did not throw a passing touchdown, he still finished with, I think, over 20 fantasy points, because as you see on the ground, he was 10 for 82, had a rushing touchdown. Week 1, you see he was 7 for 62 on the ground. So the passing is just a bonus, but he's a pretty safe play because of his involvement on the ground. And in a game against Dallas that I could see being high scoring if the offenses are flowing, to me, Jalen Hurts is a nice quarterback 1 play. Do not play Zach Ertz. Next up, we have a repeat player at the quarterback start spot. I think I said that in a weird way, but you know what I mean. We have Teddy Bridgewater of the Denver Broncos. He's been doing well. He's been playing well. He's had 2 passing touchdowns in each of the first 2 games. He had 300 yards and 2 touchdowns against Jacksonville in week 2. Him and Courtland Sutton look like they have a nice little rapport. He is currently the quarterback 15 on the season, and I expect him to keep it rolling against the New York Jets in week 3. For me, he's a low-end quarterback 1, high-end quarterback 2. And our final start of the week, or player I would start, I don't know what the term is. The third guy on the list is going to be Daniel Jones of the New York Giants. If you guys are not aware, he's currently the quarterback 5 on the season. He can run the ball. He has weapons all around him, and he can run the ball. That's really all you can ask for. He's in a great situation, and you can see his box scores recently against the New York Giants. He put up 249 yards and a touchdown. He also had 9 rushes for 95 yards and a touchdown. He had another he had some big plays called back. I remember there's a big rushing touchdown. I can't remember if that ended up turning into a score, so he would have scored either way or not. But yeah, he is actually looking like a nice low-end quarterback 1, high-end quarterback 2 play in week 3 against the Atlanta defense, which I think he can expose. All right, now we are going to move on to our running back starts of the week. And the first on the list is going to be Tyson Williams. He's currently the running back 13 on the season. And he has a really good matchup against the Detroit Lions. There's really not much to say about this. He's been productive. He hasn't seen crazy volume because Latavius Murray has been a little bit involved. So this isn't like a smash play. But for me, he is a nice running back 2 play for week 3. I would also consider playing Latavius Murray if you're desperate, just as a little bonus tidbit, because I could see either one of them getting in the end zone. But in this matchup, even if he doesn't see crazy volume, he should be able to continue to be efficient with his touches, and I could see him getting in the end zone for sure. Next up, we have a guy in Saquon Barkley, who you might be thinking, why is he on this list? Well, he is no longer really an automatic start in a lot of people's minds. He's had a rough start to the season. Week 1, 10 for 26 on the ground, 1 catch for 1 yard. Week 2, 13 for 57 on the ground, 2 catches for 12 yards. But the more important stat to point out here is his snap percentage. So week 1, he played 29 snaps on offense, 48% of the offensive snaps. Week 2, that went up to 58 total snaps, 84% of those snaps. So he's coming back from the injury in 2020. It was good to see him be more involved in week 2. And week 3, he gets a great matchup against the Atlanta Falcons. I know he's currently running back 48 on the season. He's had a slow start, but his snap percentage is increasing, and I would definitely start him in this matchup against the Atlanta Falcons, a matchup that I think he can expose. I think this could be a great get-right game for Saquon Barkley, and if he cannot succeed in this matchup, that is when I will start to be a little panicked about Saquon. And our final start of the week at the running back position is going to be David Montgomery of the Chicago Bears. Week 2, he just didn't have a great box score game. So he's been seeing a lot of volume all year. Week 1, 16 for 108 and a touchdown on the ground. He had 1 catch for 10 yards. Week 2, he actually saw more carries, 20 rushes for 61 yards. He also saw more targets and receptions, 4 targets, 3 catches for 18 yards. That was just a case where he was getting the volume. It just didn't amount to much. He didn't get in the end zone, so the touchdown didn't save him. So even though Cleveland isn't the best matchup, unless you have like a super stacked team, David Montgomery is someone that I would still play. He was the running back 7 in week 1, the running back 26 in week 2, but he is still seeing really great volume. So for me in week 3, he is a low end running back 1 and a high end running back 2. And moving on to my wide receiver stardoms, you can sense a theme. I am I'm recommending playing quite a few New York Giants just because of the matchup with the Atlanta Falcons, and because honestly the Giants haven't looked bad on offense. So Sterling Shepard is my first stardom wide receiver heading into week 3. He's currently the wide receiver 11 on the season, and he is seeing a healthy amount of targets, and I feel like the Giants are just going to be able to put up points against the Atlanta Falcons. As you can see, in week 1, he had 9 targets, caught 7 for 113 and a touchdown. Week 2 against Washington, he had 10 targets, caught 9 of them for 94 yards. Especially in PPR, I think Sterling Shepard is a solid play. For me, in week 3, he is a great wide receiver 3/flex play. My second stardom of week 3 is going to be Rondale Moore of the Arizona Cardinals. He's currently the wide receiver 19 on the season. And as you can see from week 1, he had a 29% snap percentage to week 2, where he had a 46% offensive snap percentage. His snaps are increasing, and he's been playing really well. So he's been putting up numbers. So I could see his great play on the field leading to even more playing time. Hopefully that could lead to more targets. And in a matchup with Jacksonville, that is juicy. If he's able to see even the same opportunity, he could have a good game. But if he is afforded even more snaps on the field, even more targets, he could go crazy. He has big play upside. So for me, he is a nice flex play heading into week 3. There is a little bit of risk because his snap percentage isn't super high yet. So this isn't a guaranteed lock him in no matter what. But if you're desperate, like in a league where I'm missing Antonio Brown because he's on the COVID list. So I picked up Rondale Moore and I threw him right in the lineup, and hopefully he can get some big plays rolling against Jacksonville. And my final stardom of the week is going to be Courtland Sutton of the Denver Broncos. He had 1 bad week and 1 good week. So week 1 was the bad week, 3 targets, caught 1 of them for 14 yards. Week 2, that was against the New York Giants. Week 2 against the Jacksonville Jaguars, he had 12 targets. So that was a big jump, and he caught 9 of them for 159 yards. He had a slow week 1, but he did finish as the wide receiver 6 in week 2. So there's a couple things to note. He is coming off an injury, so it is possible in week 1 they were just kind of easing him into the season. Didn't want to go too crazy. But after week 1, I should say, Jerry Jeudy got placed on injured reserve, so he's not going to be there for a while. So they kind of had to rely on Courtland Sutton in a great matchup against Jacksonville, and he definitely delivered. He gets another great matchup against the New York Jets. So if you're saying that, he only did well because of the matchup, well, he gets another good matchup. And I expect him to keep it rolling against the Jets along with Teddy Bridgewater. For me, he's a wide receiver 2 heading into week 3. All right, now I have 2 tight end starts of the week. And the first one is going to be Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens. I know it's kind of shocking to see him on here for some of you, but I know some people like to overreact a little bit. Through 2 weeks, he hasn't been overly productive. 3 for 20 in week 1, 5 for 57 in week 2. Honestly, it seems like Lamar Jackson is throwing it to his wide receivers a little bit more than he has in the past. Mark Andrews is currently tight end 18 on the season, and I'm sure those of you who drafted him over TJ Hawkinson are feeling a little down, but I do expect Mark Andrews to bounce back in this game against Detroit. Just in general, I think he will have good games moving forward. I don't think he's going to be as consistent as some of those upper tier guys like a Waller or a Kelsey or even a Hawkinson. But I just made a trade for him where I shipped off Courtland Sutton and Austin Hooper, and in return got Mark Andrews, and I'm very happy about that. He's had a slow start, but this is a really good matchup with Detroit. And honestly, you probably don't have better options. The only scenario I could really see is if you got Rob Gronkowski for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you got him late in your draft, or if you picked him up off of the waiver wire after you drafted Mark Andrews. But for the most part, you're probably just going to be starting Mark Andrews. This is just me saying don't go out there and sign some scrub and play him over Mark Andrews, because Green Bay bounced back against Detroit. Robert Tonyan of the Green Bay Packers was able to get in the end zone, and I could definitely see Mark Andrews scoring in this game. And my next and final tight end start is going to be Austin Hooper. This is someone you could pick up off of waivers and play if you're a little desperate at the position. Jarvis Landry just got placed on injured reserve, so you would think that would open up targets for him, but Odell Beckham Jr. is coming back. So we'll see how that plays out. So to me, he's just a solid play if you're desperate for a tight end, and I think he should see some solid targets. He's not like a spectacular play, but the tight end position is so shallow that you could do a lot worse than Austin Hooper. For me, he's a high-end tight end 2 heading into week 3. You saw week 1, he had 3 targets. In week 2, he caught 5 targets. He's caught every single one of his targets, it looks like. So hopefully, he'll have about 5 receptions, hopefully get about 40 to 60 yards. That'd be ideal. And if he can get in the end zone, you're rocking and rolling, baby. All right, now we're going to move on to my sits of week 3, and I don't have very many. I have 3 total. And the reason for that is I was looking across like the rankings, and I'm just listening to the perception of certain players on like Twitter and just in general. And there weren't a ton of players that I saw being heavily started that I'm thinking, okay, I need to make a claim that you shouldn't start them. It seems like a lot of the players that are not in good situations, they're not really highly ranked. I'm not really seeing a lot of people saying that they want to start them. So I didn't really feel the need to go out there and pick like the 20th ranked tight end and say, oh, don't start him. So, because like, okay, obviously, or I didn't want to pick like DeAndre Hopkins and say, oh, Hopkins is a start of the week, because most people are starting him. So we're gonna start with our sit-ems here. I have one quarterback. It's Jameis Winston. He had 5 touchdowns in week 1, only 148 yards, but he was getting the ball in the end zone. He had a nice week against Green Bay. But in week 2, things took a horrible turn. 50% completion percentage, 111 yards, 2 picks. 4 for 31 on the ground gave you something. But yeah, this was a bad week for Jameis Winston. That was against the Carolina Panthers. Now he gets the New England Patriots, and I'm staying as far away from that as I can. Next up, we have Darrell Henderson, who I must say, before we get into it, he's questionable as of this recording, which is September 24th at 8:37 p.m. He's currently questionable with an ankle injury, so we'll have to monitor that. But he's currently the running back 6 on the season. Now, this is a guy I thought of bringing up because this is someone that a lot of people are considering starting. So for me, he is not a must sit at the running back position, but you might have better options on your teams. He has a tough matchup with Tampa Bay. They shut down Ezekiel Elliott in week 1, if you remember that. And I could see the Rams kind of turning away from the running game, sort of like what the Cowboys did, and utilizing Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Tyler Higbee a little bit more. And since he is dealing with an injury, they do have Sony Michel on the team. I'm not sure, even if Darrell Henderson plays, it's hard to say how healthy he will be and what the split will be between him and Sony Michel. So to me, he's more of like a wide or a running back 3 or a flex play. So not a total must sit, but someone that if you have better options, I would just lean that way. And my final sit for heading into week 3 is going to be at the wide receiver position. We got Jalen Waddle of the Miami Dolphins. He's been seeing targets this year. Five targets. He had 4 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown in week 1. And then week 2, in a game that got shut out, he still saw 8 targets, caught 6 of them for 48. And it's been okay for the rookie. He hasn't had a bad start. It's been solid. He's been seeing targets, but now Tua, their starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, is out, and it's looking like Will Fuller might be making his debut with the Miami Dolphins. So now they have Jacoby Brissett starting at quarterback. You have Will Fuller coming back. I just don't really like this offense in general right now with the quarterback change. To me, Jalen Waddle is going to need a big play to really be relevant for fantasy. It could happen. They get the Raiders this week, so it's possible. You never know. Maybe he'll get a big play, but it is likely that you have better options than Jalen Waddle. And that is going to do it for my Week 3 2021 Stardom Situm fantasy football video. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.